Hey, and welcome back to the Saddle Cartel podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Special guest with me today, Mr. Stephen Lathrop from Lathrop and Sons Boot Company. Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us, John. This is going to be exciting.
It is. I've been waiting for this one for several months after you and I was able to talk a few months ago and kind of discuss the problems with saddle hunting when it comes to the pressures of the feet. And you had a lot of insight on some things that guys can kind of do to help combat that. So this is really going to spark some interest for people that are suffering from the pressures of the feet while saddle hunting. But before we jump into that, if you would, Stephen, just give the folks and the viewers a little bit of background and what makes you kind of like an expert, in my opinion, on the pressures of the feet and things guys can do to help combat that.
Well, clearly it's experience, life lessons, just like any occupation. But both my brother and myself, he's my business partner here. We were raised in a podiatry clinic. Our father retired, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. He's a podiatrist, very successful, and James and I were really his right-hand man. And we assisted in surgical procedures with him, patient care, orthotic fabrication, um, design, development of footwear, uh, really understanding biomechanics, because in the small community that we live in, it's 7 to 8,000 people here in Robinson, Illinois, located in southeastern Illinois. And we have a lot of industry here. So there's a lot of people standing on their feet, 10, 12-hour shifts, right?
Yeah.
And that takes a toll on your feet. And so when I come to the table and I speak of experience, I have people walking into a podiatry clinic that they're limping physically, and they are going through the treatment plans with their father, and they're really relying on us to solve a problem so that they can go to work every day. So I can't really think of a better platform or launching board to take that same knowledge and energy and go into the hunting boot development and those kind of things. So, that's really our background that set the stage for what we do.
That's awesome. And how long has Lathrop and Sons kind of been manufacturing hunting boots? How long?
All right, so we launched our own brand in 2017, but prior to that, Lathrop and Sons still operated fitting mountain boots as a custom boot system, uh, which is orthotics in the entire fitment for someone that's really struggling, or retail boots. I refer to it as an off-the-shelf boot. And we have been doing that since, oh goodness, early 2000s. So we were doing that basically on the side while we were still in the medical field.
Yeah.
It really served us an opportunity to get entrenched in the industry, get to do some hunts that we normally wouldn't be able to do, go and experience some things that it's just flat expensive to do. And like a lot of people that might be listening about having two businesses, you have your day job and then you have a business on the side. And what ends up happening is if you hit a lick and you're successful, you end up starting to get busier and busier and busier and busier. And now you're like, okay, what are we going to do here?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to keep doing the medical? Or are we going to do the hunting boot? There's, this is your passion. You love the guys that you're working with. You got a lot in common. And so it was a tipping point. It was time to put the license on hold. Let's focus on it. We got a big storm rolling in here, so if the viewers are hearing any of that, that's what's going on.
Sounds a little windy back there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So since 17-ish time frame, you guys have totally focused on the hunting boot. What has been some good feedback that you guys have received from your customers on what you guys offer versus just an off-the-shelf product?
Now you've got to understand that there's a host of reasons a person might want to go one way or the other. If you've never, let's start with the custom side of what we do.
Okay.
I would say if I could give you, if you've gone on a hunt and you just wrecked your feet, I did a couple consultations for custom boot systems yesterday. Two of the people I talked to both said, those heels that you used to show on your ad or your website, I was on a hunt in New Mexico. My heels look like that. Like, I'll never endure that again. I will spend the money to go through this because I need a chart. I've got work shoes that I wear. You can help me with that. So having just a horrible experience, suffering through a hunt would probably be the number one reason for the custom. You just keep buying a boot off the shelf, you're really not getting any help. They're just telling you features about the boot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about what I'm saying. Oh, this has this sole, this midsole, but what's it doing for me?
Yep.
They don't understand the boot last. So you're buying boots, you got a closet full of boots and nothing fits you still. So
Yep.
maybe you got a couple thousand in footwear and you can't sell any of them. And then you've just listened to a lot of people that have gone on these hunts and said, dude, don't risk it, do it right. I've got the guys called Stephen and James. They're hunters. They love to bow hunt. They've hunted out west. They've done a lot of this stuff. So those would be the top three reasons to go more towards the custom side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we even call it, here we call it a quick fit. It's a nickname, but it's an off-the-shelf boot that we do genuinely try to help somebody. If they call in, we'll help discuss a little bit about their foot, guide them in the right direction to an off-the-shelf boot, make suggestions on sizing, and encourage them to update that even factory insole that we put in it with our standard Synergy gel insole. And that's different than the orthotic that is in the custom boot system. So the custom boot system, we do utilize our 3D foot mapping technology, which allows you to map the feet to basically get your feet to Robinson, Illinois, so that the two boot wizards can sit down and start laying that all out. And our hope is our findings on this intake form during our consultation with you overlap, because if those overlap, then we know we're headed the right way.
Yeah.
Ultimately, at the end of any custom boot system, we have taken an off-the-shelf boot that closely resembles the shape of your foot. That boot will go through a series of warming and moldings. A lot of these average off-the-shelf boots offer no ability to mold it. That requires something to be built into the boot during the design and development, and that is what we do. We put thermal barriers behind that boot so that we can warm that and shape it just like a downhill ski boot. We use terminology like capturing the rear foot, narrowing up the midfoot, widening the forefoot. We can do that with that thermal barrier. You're not stretching the boot. And then your orthotic, which is different than the off-the-shelf insole, it's designed based on our consultation and that foot mapping.
Mm-hmm.
No one can really do this unless they truly have the experience to understand what they're looking at, and they're good listeners. I'm listening to what John's telling me he's experiencing, and I'm thinking back in this database of the thousands of people that I've helped solve these problems. What would be the above average guess to help put that in place to get you going the right way? And that's poured and fit to the boot, and then it's shipped out to you. And then we go through a post fitting to make sure that that boot and system is working for you. Because the last thing that Lathrop and Sons wants to do is to put effort into something and then just say, here it is, John, wear it. Well, that's what everyone else would do.
Sure.
That's not really professional. They're investing in a chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
That chart is there for future purchases. So you're able to come back and utilize that chart for new orthotics for your work shoes, your athletic shoes, or your walking shoes, and you're able to use it for a new pair of boots. and we're able to reduce the cost, considerably, because we've gone through the work. You've put the effort into it. So the custom is definitely a great process for the serious person or somebody that just wants the best and doesn't want to guess. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter whether it's boots, bows, saddles, tree stands, sky's the limit, you
Yep.
know?
And that's wonderful because something I've experienced and I see a lot of comments made is, you'll see guys invest in the best bow or in the best camo or what have you, but they kind of neglect something as important as their feet because walking in or in our situation, sitting in a saddle where your feet's in that awkward position and you're kind of leaning or you're kneeling into a tree all day, you want the comfort in your feet, to
Yes.
circumvent all that, why not invest in something that important? Instead of worrying about the latest, greatest, toys and gadgets. I think that I know the mistake I made is I would be that guy who would go buy the $100 pair at Walmart or wherever and not pay attention to it. And I would just destroy my feet on the hike. And then, especially when I got into saddle hunting, I had no idea what the pressures of the feet would do to me. And I started off in a pair of muck boots of all things, saddle hunting, and I found out really quick this is not going to work. I mean, it was horrible to sit in a saddle with a pair of muck boots. So that's
Oh,
when I kind of started really diving and going down the rabbit hole of what can help me as a saddle hunter really take the pressure off my feet. And investing in a good pair of footwear, I think, is just crucial for what we're doing here.
yeah. How, when you go see what you're doing and what we do are a little bit different, but how far, I mean, an average, if you park at a trailhead and go in to just get to where you're wanting to put that saddle up, how far would you say on an average you're walking?
I'm kind of in a special circumstance where I hunt. So I'm in the Appalachian Mountains, southern West Virginia and southern Virginia. So sometimes it's not distance so much as it is inclines and declines.
Yeah.
I would say on average, I'm walking 500 yards to maybe a mile to get where I'm going to hunt because I found in my experience that these deer really key in on your ATVs because you have to utilize an ATV here just to get to the top of the ridge tops, so you're not walking straight up a mountain all the time. But I found that these deer do listen for those four wheelers. So the further you can park away and separate the noise of that ATV from where you're going to hunt, I would rather do that and try to set myself up for a more flatter walk on the ridge tops and put some distance between us just so that ATV is not kind of buggering the deer up, so to speak.
Right. And the reason that I was asking that was, what we're doing here can be troubling to your feet. I mean, it can. I mean, I probably am setting somewhere between 12, 14 to 16 stands.
Mm-hmm.
They will be anything from a ladder stand to a, hang on stand, and some screw in steps, some rails, um, always a harness, and just doing that, and even walking to hunt on some of these places the distance of 40 acres, it'll beat you up, and the shed hunting and the rest of that. So I can imagine what it's doing here in southeastern Illinois to guys. So what could it possibly be doing to guys that are hunting that West Virginia, Appalachia
Mm-hmm.
mountains? I mean, I call them mountains because we have to go to southern Illinois, 2 hours south of us, to get into some really cool stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And it will
it's
flat
mountains.
it'll beat you up.
And another guy I've had on the podcast before, and I know he's a big proponent of you guys, is Nathan Keelan. He's in the same
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
and Nathan praises the footwear from Lathrop and Sons, and I don't think he would probably walk in the mountain without a pair of your boots. So, I follow that guy and believe in what he says. He is a super good hunter, and if he's going to promote a product like that, that was the first thing that just sparked my interest too. I was like, okay, I got to see more about this. So, and I know you and I talked previously on the phone, and you're not a saddle hunter, but you was really curious about the pressures of the feet and how the feet kind of set in a saddle, whether you're leaning or you're kneeling into a tree. So you had some pretty good insight on that. Talk to us about that a little bit.
I do. So, Lathrop and Sons primary, and this is really crazy. Lathrop and Sons prior, we're a Midwest company that are 80% focused on hunting whitetail with our bows and land management. That's what we do.
Yep.
20% of the time, yeah, we get to go on a hunt. Okay. But I'm telling you, what I'm seeing is this trend, more and more people doing what you're doing. I mean, I'm seeing my son Lane, who's an accomplished bow hunter, that's seeing how we've always done it. And he's saying, Dad, what do you think of that? What do you think of that? And he's watching a lot of these guys and he's wanting to try all this different stuff. And I'm like, hey, go for it. But this is my mobile setup. Like, this is what I used before any of that stuff was even talked about. And I still feel, from my perspective and what I'm doing, I'm quieter and I'm more confident. So that's what I'm going to. If you want to do the rest of this stuff, go for it, dude.
Yeah.
That's how you learn,
Yeah.
But I'm seeing more and more people getting into the saddle mobile hunting. And because of that, they're putting on more miles. They're putting more strain in their legs and their feet.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you got a fixed position stand, it's already there. You go up the tree and sit down the tree.
Yep.
Mobile, you got to get there. You might go to that tree and scope it out from a distance from 100 yards with your binos, even go, I think I can get right there, and it's right on the edge. And then you get there and go, I can't even get in that stand. Now you stand here and you end up inch warming, right?
Yeah.
So you're putting a little more mileage on, but then when you get to the tree, you get the work begins. You get to put the rails up and you climb up or down and up again, put the stand up. It's like 2 or 3. So you're literally putting more strain on your extremities, your legs and your feet, than you would if you had that. Not saying it's bad. I'm just saying listeners need to be prepared of what that's going to do for your feet, do to your feet and your legs. And from having this, this influx of people with interest, which I think it's excellent, I'm starting to develop a pattern of what's going on. I'm hearing the same people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing people that are doing the same type of hunting mention these things to me that are plaguing them. And what's really interesting, they'll say to you, with either their existing boots or even a pair of boots that we fit them with. It's totally coincidental. I want you to hear me out. When I wear the boots, my arch hurts. When I wear the boots, the back of my heel hurts. This hurts, that hurts. Okay. How do you get in that saddle? How do you do this? And then I stumble across a photo online that somebody posted, and it showed somebody in a saddle and a harness, and the light bulb went off. Do you remember in track when we all did wall push-up stretches, like a calf stretch, Achilles stretch?
Yep.
You put your feet on the ground, you bent your knee, you leaned in the wall, and I mean, you stretched the snot out of the back of your calf, right?
100%.
These guys are doing an Achilles stretch for 4 hours straight. Imagine if you leaned into the wall and stretched your calf out for 4 hours, what your plantar fascia, that's your Achilles tendon, that's your plantar fascia band. Yes, stretchment for the Achilles tendon is one of the rehabs to get over heel pain. But it's not intended to be stretched for 4 hours straight. So what I personally feel is happening, the positioning of the saddle and the position that the person is setting them in, they're not being informed correctly on how to get the biomechanics down. And because of that, they're inducing additional strain on the Achilles tendon and plantar fasciitis, and they're actually causing this stuff to happen. And they're not wearing the right platform under their foot. You would not want to wear a rubber boot. You would not want to wear anything that would have a lack of torsional stability. And I describe torsional stability to most people as if you grasp the heel and you grasp the ball of the foot. So visualize a boot in front of me and you're holding it. If you can twist that or flex it, pitch it, that all that's going to do is trash your foot. What you want is a stiffer platform that reduce the flexing. And this is the one thing that L&S, our company, is really known for, is the biomechanics in the boot. So not only do we have the torsional stability in the boot, but we understand that increasing the amount of heel height under your heel, okay, and it's just done with the midsole, there's an increase in that. You actually offload the tension in the Achilles tendon and the calf. So even if you're in a bit of a stretched position, like the legs bent forward like this,
Yep.
you still have that heel height. So you can get that torso in that position where you feel comfortable, but you're actually offloading some of that. Yes, I'm probably diving a little deep here for a lot of viewers, but the fact of the matter is a lot of the positioning of the platform, you can't really jack it up too much because it's my understanding that cantilever is there to hold that in position. If you invert that or lift that too much, you run the risk of losing that. So it has to come from somewhere. And I feel like that's really super important. And I've just over and over heard guys complaining of that. And that has to be where it's coming from.
And that makes absolute complete sense to me after you explain it that way, that you're stretching that Achilles, that plantar fasciitis. So it's not a position that you're meant to be in for those sustained amount of time.
God, no, it flattens your foot out.
Yes.
I
So,
mean, it's just torquing it.
yeah. So having that stiffer soled boot that's not going to flex up and down or twist
Hell,
left or right is going to provide that stability while you're in that position, even though you probably should. I would imagine your suggestion would be to maybe stand up and take some pressure off from time to time or
I was
nail it to the tree.
I was going to say that. So we got two things going for us because a Lathrop and Sons boot is so stable. It's kind of a double-edged sword here. Because it's so stable, you can get away with over torquing. So you can apply and stand longer because of that, because you have nothing warning you that you've been in a position too long.
Yeah.
It is insulating you from the pains and discomfort that you would be having in a softer, flexible shoe. So that's something that guys need to be careful. You step into a level of boot like this, like you're going to be able to stand right on the edge of that rail and not notice it.
Off.
Because it's not flexing around it,
Yeah.
I remember back in the old days when I was 17, 18, and all we had were the lacrosse green, when they were still built up in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
a hand laid rubber boot. And I remember standing on rungs and it just felt like my foot was drove right into the bottom of it. And I honestly believe there's a bunch of younger guys out there that money's probably tight for them. So, they're in college or high school. So they buy the best platform in their footwear. They just put a rubber boot on and they're standing in that. And I was there and I was tough, but I don't really even put a rubber boot on my foot. And now I'm using more of it's made by Lacrosse. It's their Arrowhead with the neoprene. And with our non-typical cold weather insole, I mean, I can hunt down into the teens with that setup. But again, I spend more time, I guess, where I was going with that, in more of a lace-up boot with torsional stability. But you're right. putting that position, getting into that position, pulling the Achilles, pulling the plantar fascia, offloading it is great. The other thing that you need to do is to increase some of the heel height, and that's where the Latham & Sons boot comes in, and the Synergy insole, because it's lifting the heel, getting you at that angle. So if you need to lower that platform to get in that optimal resting position, that lift has kind of offloaded some of that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You can get away with lowering it, but because you've got the lift in your shoe, you're kind of creating a wedged effect. So there's a couple ways to skin this cat, right? And everybody's a little different. I was going to tell you something that I ran into, and I think a lot of people that are doing this have also. Again, I have not done any of this saddle hunting, but I experienced in February while I was shed hunting something that I haven't experienced for quite a while, if ever. And if it did happen, it was short-lived. It was there and gone. So let's roll into spring. We're planting food plots. Go, 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 go. Same pair of boots, right? Go, 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 go. Actually, we'll go even further. SCI, I'm even in the boots, pounding the show floor, walking around, talking to guides and outfitters that are part of our program. We have a select few people every year from a guide standpoint that we let in because we can only handle so many.
Sure.
And so we're at the show meeting all these people, walking around. I'm in this pair of boots. We go into food plot season, on and off tractors, hand cranking seed, doing all this stuff. We go from that to stand prep, up, down, doing all this.
Mm-hmm.
Then we roll into whitetail season, right?
Yep.
I'm doing all this. Same pair of boots. Perfect. I'm the boot doctor, man. I'm going to make sure my boots are utterly phenomenal. And they were. I get done with the season ends. What do? I continue to shoot my bow because I really love to shoot my bow. So it's about every 3 days I go out in the garage and I shoot for form. It's time to shed hunt. There were a couple target bucks that we were after. I wanted to find their sheds. So I get real cranked up one day and I throw that same pair of boots on and I take off. And when I got home, I did over 4.5 hours. I've talked with Nathan. He tells me how many miles he's putting on before he's even picking one shed up. So I put 4.5 miles on. I got to the house, slipped my boots, and I was like, God, I pulled my sock down. It was sore and I couldn't figure it out. And I got looking and got feeling around like, man, that's sore. I pressed right on the back of my heel. I could not figure it out. And I'm finally getting over it. My father, I'd been icing it. This hurt, man. Like this hurt.
Oh, gosh.
What it was sitting on my butt, not stretching out, sitting on my butt. My calf muscles tightened up, my Achilles tendon tightened up. And what can happen when you get a little lazy, I was licking my wounds. The hunting season was over. I'm just kind of chilling out, right? Everything tightens up, and then you throw your boots on and you take off. And I'm jumping creeks. Well, behind your heel bone, you've got a bursa, a little fluid sac. It's there to protect the Achilles tendon when it goes up and down so it doesn't rub the sheath on the heel bone.
Okay.
Well, when you haven't been doing a lot and your calf tightens up, the tendon gets tight like a guitar string. You jump the creek, and when you jump the creek, the Achilles tendon comes in, right? The heel goes back. There's a subtle compression taking place. Well, I inflamed that bursa sac on the back of that heel, and I'm telling you what, man, that was gnarly to get over. What I'm telling you is it's opened my eyes to what these guys saddle hunting are doing. And I'll bet a bunch of listeners out there right now have struggled with this. If they didn't get what I did, they didn't do what I did long enough to do it. But I'll bet they've got it. I bet they've come off hunts, go, oh my God, for 2 days, they're like, man, I don't have a blister. I don't have a hot spot. but I've got a spot on the back of my heel that feels a little swollen and it's sore. You've inflamed the bursa sac because of the position that you're putting that foot in and that leg in, and you're pulling that, pressing that tendon because the tendon's under tension,
Yeah.
right? From the position, it's getting pulled. Now it's like a guitar string, it's super tight. Then you got the bursa sac and you're leaning forward, and all you're doing is just driving that into the back of that bursa sac and then pressing it into the heel counter. And I guarantee there's a bunch of guys dealing with that. They
Oh,
have to
yeah.
be. They're
Kind of
just,
makes sense. Yeah.
I
If kind of
guarantee
like
it.
if you don't use it, you lose it, so to speak. So it's almost like you should warm up before the season starts, not really
Absolutely.
just jump straight into it, but maybe take a few weeks and spend an hour, 30 minutes, an hour a day or whatever, kind of getting those things greased up. So
Dead serious. And I actually, my father looked at me and said, he asked me every question. It was like, man, I flipped the switch in his mind. He's 82 years old. Flipped the switch and he goes, what boot were you wearing? How long had you been wearing that boot? Was this one of the models that you guys were doing some neat stuff to or changed anything? Like he's asking the right, he wasn't involved in any of this. Like, yes, he taught us biomechanics and how to make things work, but he didn't develop any of this footwear. So he's asking me these targeted questions. And he said, how long had you just kind of been sitting around, not doing anything? And I told him, well, over a month,
yeah,
well, you know, and the boot was fine before that. I said, Dad, it was fine the whole time I was doing it. He goes, Steven, I'm telling you, you're getting older. You gotta stretch this stuff out. And I mean, he's right, and you're picking up on it. So I would say to you, you guys got a bunch of middle-aged to older guys that are doing this stuff and love to do it. When you lay off of this stuff, you need to stretch out some to get your body feeling it. And these young guys listening go, well, their time's coming.
yeah. Just wait, it's coming.
It does, and it's no
Yes,
fun to
sir.
have happen to you either.
No, and unfortunately, the older you get, the more investment you have to put into your physical health. I mean, it doesn't just come as easy anymore, you know.
You know what? Lane and I were trying to roost some birds last night, and we were coming home, and I said, Bud, I said, as we get older, it's even more important to take care of ourselves, from exercising to trying to eat a little healthier. It's good for your mental state, everything, because
Everything.
as we get older, we can't deal with as much of the pressures that we could when we were in our 20s and
Yep.
30s.
We just don't bounce back as quick anymore.
No, you don't. And it's all about if we can empower people to take some of these little tips that we're talking about here today to protect them so they don't have to sit, and nurse something or go to a doctor and do that stuff. So, good course of action. If you're really wanting to be a saddle hunter, my opinion would be get it, set it up, make sure you got the right boots on, make sure somebody understands the position. You need to make sure that the company you're getting the saddle for, that there is somebody really educating it. And I know there are a lot of these companies out there. They seem to be new ones springing up. I can see it constantly, right? But I'm telling you, I think that people really ought to be educated on, some of these positions that you should or shouldn't be in. I guess it would be no different than lifting weights incorrectly and injuring yourself. So,
Yeah, you're performing a physical function, so
okay, time.
you know what I mean. You can't just jump into this thing immediately and expect ultimate performance. You have to warm up and train to that, just like you would any other physical movement.
I was gonna look here. I got this photo and I asked these guys, I said, is this what you're doing? Is this what you're doing? Because this photo, and I don't know if it'll show up here, but it's what this guy was doing was crazy. And I kind of hang on to this because, when a guy says this, I said, is this what you look like when you're up in a tree stand and uh your saddle?
Yeah, and as we discussed, the one factor in saddle hunting that I have found to be uncomfortable, and the only one, is the pressure of the feet. So I think this is going to be really big for a lot of people that are interested in trying to combat that soreness and that pressure that you experience in the stand. This is you, Stephen. Thank you so much. But yeah, sure.
No, it's happy to, bring it up. It's exciting to get the information out there, and I probably need to spend a little more time on it right now. What the shit that we're in right now is, believe it or not, everyone's trying to get their sheep and goat boots fitted, and they're going on some of these, and then we'll start taking a shift into the um, more of the whitetail and that stuff. So I don't know. Um, Maybe we should get together and remind people of this stuff, because it's no joke, man. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of dealing with it. I'm getting over it, and there's some real understanding, and there's some neat things that we need to be embarking on and looking at to try to help think a little bit more.
Yeah. And for a lot of folks, you may get to take a little vacation, a week or maybe 2 weeks if you're lucky in a hunt season, but to really injure yourself on the days you can hunt and then knock yourself out of days that you can't hunt because you're hurting, we have to kind of be mindful that let's prepare and be ready for those so we're not knocking ourselves out of precious days to hunt.
Big time.
Absolutely.
Big time.
So you and I discussed before we started recording, if somebody is serious about really wanting to look at something custom and to really help their feet in these situations, Lathrop & Son is going to offer the Saddle Cartel a discount. We are not going to blast this discount, but in the future, if you are somebody that is serious about wanting to really look at a pair of customs to really help your feet, reach out to us at the Saddle Cartel Facebook page. Stephen and his brother have been generous enough to going to provide us with a discount code. I know I'm going to take advantage of it. Stephen, anything else you want to just throw out there for the listeners right now when it comes to your opinions on what can really help, even if it's not a custom boot? It's we've talked about the stiffness, the torsion and the flex. Anything else that we missed?
No, I think the main thing to understand is there are a lot of options out there, and it's very easy to get confused by these options. There's no doubt about it. It's with anything. But I think what Lathrop & Sons has to offer the listeners is 30 plus years of not only clinical experience, but I started bow hunting at 15, and I might be able to put a little different twist on it. And we always laugh and joke and say we're the approachable boot company, but the fact of the matter is this: somebody listening to this sends a DM to our Instagram or picks up the phone and call, we have a receptionist that forwards your phone call to my desk. It does not go to a voicemail unless I'm on the other line. And if I'm not on the other line, I pick it up.
Yeah,
My brother does the same thing. I think that is massive.
that is huge. You just don't get that kind of service.
I know it. And I have to remind people of that. James and I are customers too.
Yep.
And you have no idea how hard it is for me to do business as a customer with a company that I feel like I'm just a number.
Yep.
Because sometimes it might work out all right, but when things don't go really very good, it's pretty rocky. So that is the one thing that I could say is, interest, pick up the phone, the Approachable Boot Company, get one of us on the phone and spill your guts to us. Tell us about your foot. Tell us what you're struggling with. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what degree to have your platform out, but I'm certainly going to give you some golden nuggets regarding footwear that could help you. Whether you buy our boot or you're running an existing boot and you want to put one of our standard insoles in your boot for $50 to give yourself a little more hit, maybe that's what your budget is. I believe that we have something to help everybody.
That's awesome. And I did want you to touch before we end the recording on that new insole that you guys are offering, because when I listened to a previous podcast of yours, you talk about warming the foot and how this new insole is like. Explain to people how that really works. I mean, I can't do it. You do it better.
I'll explain it to you. So we I guess it was in October, we launched a new insole. Now, understand when I say new insole, this was an insole that my brother and I have been using for 20 plus years or more. We were trying to always take a conventional rubber boot because the industry told all of us rubber boots were the only way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Oh yeah.
And and the word scent free was on everything. So we all were freaked out if we wore anything other than that. And we froze in that. So what we did was we would always take our rubber boots into our orthotic laboratory. And because we were in the foot orthotic, we had a vast array of materials that could be utilized inside the boot. So we started playing with all these different insoles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And material combinations. And I can remember one day walking in and saying to James, man, you need to put that material in your boots. He's like, what are you talking about? And he goes, dude, my feet were warm. They were a little sweaty, in fact. He's like, really? Yeah. So we started doing this stuff. We were just doing it for ourselves. Then we started doing it for buddies. Then we started laminating this stuff in our lab ourselves. And it became really clear that we needed to be getting this, find somebody that could do this for us. So we really researched, but we came out with a cold weather whitetail insole. And what's unique about this is we took the biomechanics of orthotic therapy and we created a 3/4 length mold. So it stabilizes the heel, the arch. But what's really cool about it is the top cover is what we call an aerogel foam. Now, aerogel is really tiny. It's a dust. It's mixed in with foam. And because this aerogel is so small, the air molecule cannot be compressed even under load. This technology is used by Prime in their grip, their bow grip.
Yep.
Air insulates. So we have aerogel in the foam, and then we took it a step further and we put, they call it an egg crate skive over the top. Now, what's unique about this? So you get the stability from the heel cup and the plate, and then you get the insulating properties of the foam. So you've got the foam itself that's insulating from the aerogel, but then you've got the 3D skive. Now, this is what's cool. So now you've got this big, heavy lofted sock on your foot. It's really cold. You're in a stand or a saddle, and your feet are resting on it. And when you're suspended, or semi-weight bearing, we'll call it. So if you're in a stand in a seat like I am right now,
yep,
I'm semi-weight bearing. If you're in your saddle, semi-weight bearing would be where your knees, I think, are up against the tree. So you're resting, but very little. You think you're taking 70% off of your feet at that point? I don't know.
Yeah. I would imagine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so now what you're doing, because you're not compressing all the sock, those highs and lows of the egg crate are pressing into the sock. Now the loft of the sock are filling those voids. Now you're trapping air.
Yeah.
Because in a normal boot, conventional boot, you'd just be flattening it.
Yep.
So you're trapping all this air under your foot.
And it has a warming effect for your feet.
Yes, the air is an insulator. That's what, these commercial windows are double pane. It's got air trapped in it. That's what keeps them from fogging up, right?
Yeah.
It works. So what we've got a lot of guys doing in your neck of the woods and even around here and out west, they'll use the Synergy insoles to hike in, and then they'll loosen their boot up, pull their Synergies out, drop their non-typicals in, loosen up their boots, and they're sitting there with their active use boot, but their non-typical cold weather insole in it.
And that was something that I really keyed in on when you was talking about that. And I think with Clint from Truth from the Stand is loosening that boot and allowing some air to get in there to help that insulating effect. Instead of cranking it all down and squeezing it all out, let some of it in.
Exactly it. You're pushing the air out of the boot. And when you press all that air, it's gone.
Yeah. So
You
you
got it,
need,
man.
yeah, that's, gosh, that was just so smart when I heard that. I was like, I'm totally going to do that.
And it's easy to, I mean, these are just things, for James and I to bring it to the light. I mean, again, it's kind of like the boot doctors or the mad scientists. We live this.
Yeah.
We live this, man. I froze. I froze. I've walked to the side. I've done everything that every listener out there has done. When you live where I do, and you started when you were 14 and 15 years old, you know, so cold that you had your bow over one arm and your hands because you couldn't even untie your string at the end of the hunt. You couldn't even touch the screw in step. Like, I've been there. I've done all this stuff. And these are how all these philosophy and ideas start to develop in the footwear. And we're just starting, man.
That's so
This,
awesome.
yeah, it's exciting.
I am so excited to see just everything you guys are going to get out there for us as hunters in this industry and just helping us, with our foot problems and better boot material and just all the education and insight you guys offer. It's amazing. Stephen, I've had you on for nearly an hour. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing in the industry. Thank you for coming on and sharing, some of your thoughts and opinions on what guys can help do when they're dealing with the foot issues and saddle hunting. Anything else other than that? I'm going to, folks, I will be putting a link to Lathrop and Sons in this, YouTube channel when I post it. So anything you want to do, you click on that link, and it'll give you a number for Stephen and those guys. So give them a call. Pick their brain about any questions you may have when it comes to your feet. Other than that, anything else, Stephen? You got it.
No, I appreciate the opportunity we do as a brand and a company to come on here and hopefully help some of your listeners and spread the word, man.
All right. Well, I'm going to be a customer soon, guys. So if you got any questions, give me 6 months and I'll let you know my thoughts because I'm going to take advantage of this system. I'm going to invest in my feet myself. So, Stephen, I'll keep you on the line after we stop the recording real quick. But otherwise, hey, guys, don't forget we have Men's Mental Health Awareness coming up in June. We're going to have a lot of just amazing, amazing stuff to raffle off for that. So stay tuned for everything coming from Men's Mental Health. Other than that, stay safe. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk soon.